Evening, folks. Cross your fingers. Hope our audio is working right. Tonight, we got David Whitley, the Whimsical One, I've named him. He's got many good things to say, different looks at things, and I'm thinking it's pretty good these days to be a Florida Gator. If you look at what's going on around the leagues, as they say, in the league, good stuff happening with the Gators in lots of sports. We'll see what David says about that. He has a little bit different opinion. Also, a pretty good run for the SEC. Uh, we'll talk to Rob Browne, who's the maestro for SEC Sidelines. He'll be here shortly. And there's David Willey's chance, Loren Meadows' chance to sum it up for us. He's back from Auburn, where he saw the massacre. What a performance by the softball team for the Gators. Stand by. If all is well here, we'll be joining you shortly right here on the Buddy Martin Show for the next hour. Tell your friends and neighbors we think we're on the air.
It's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye!
You ready, champ? I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Evening, welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the Buddy Martin Show. I get it mixed up. I do so many shows these 2 days, I get confused with what I'm doing. But this is the Tuesday night edition of the Buddy Martin Show, where we feature the Whimsical One. He'll be here shortly, and we broke down our studio, carried it back to Panama City, set it up again. Who knows what bugs are in it? As you can see, our background is still somewhat temporary here in this beautiful place right by St. Andrews Bay, but hope we're coming to you loud and clear. Thank you, Michael, for that. Let's talk about some of the good things that have happened. I guess the old cliche, it's great to be a Florida Gator, although it's not cliche to those who enjoy it, is working out well. So many good things happening to the program these days, not the least of which is the dynamic softball victory in the SEC. What a performance by Tim Walton's team. I went on the show this morning with Shane Matthews and 8 Macro because I didn't think they were an elite team yet. And I said that about, 15 games ago, and they weren't. But still, the fact is their performance they had in the SEC tournament was colossal. Let's just get right to it and go see the Whimsical One himself. Joins us usually on Tuesday nights. Glad to have him. He's one of the terrific, by the way, award-winning, I must say again, award-winning columnist. Yes, that's you, baby. And what a great award it was. You just let it slip past me. Graham Hall had to tell me that you won the first place award for the best column in the Associated Press Sports Center. David, that's terrific. Congratulations.
But I noticed you have an Emmy behind you. Isn't that an Emmy on the
I
mantle?
think it's just some cheap simulation of it, I think.
Oh, no. Don't be modest.
You know what? I think my wife's thinking around again about putting that Emmy back up behind me. She keeps putting it back behind me, maybe bring it folk out. It is. But that's
that was the year where that's a year where you beat out Norman Lear, right? For like best comedy series or best.
No, I actually beat him up. I didn't beat him out. But no,
Okay.
no. But now this is about you, David. You're great about deflecting things like this. But you've been doing this really. Talk about the word elite. I've had some argument in the last couple weeks about the word elite. You've been an elite columnist for a long time. I've always loved your stuff. When you work at the Sentinel, my gosh, you guys had 3 giants. You have Bianchi, giant. I can't call him a giant. That physical sense.
Yeah.
And,
Figuratively a giant.
Yeah. And who else was it? Somebody. Who was the third?
We had of course, I came along right at the tail end of one Larry Guest, whom I'm sure a lot of people
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Probably not a
and
popular fan name among Gator fans, I would think.
yeah. Larry had his rough spots with the Gators over the years.
He had his peccadillos, as they say.
Fidel, but you got to, but love him or hate him, you always wanted to read him to see what he had to say.
He did have a
And
good
that's
following,
remarkable.
for sure.
He did.
Anyway, and who was the guy that we went to Miami, the columnist? Somebody else that you had on staff. You were three
Yeah,
of them.
well, gosh, it was Mike and I. We had, George Diaz was there for a while. Schmitz, he wasn't the set column, but everybody should genuflect towards Jerry Green, who was a
Well, he was one of my discoveries.
Yes, and quite a discovery it was.
I found him in Fort Pierce. Whatever he worked in today, he was terrific, and he had several careers. But we digress, David. I just want to say congratulations. Very happy for you. Hey, look, we got a little something to talk about right about this week. I'm grateful for that. I'm in a much more grateful mood these days, David. I've decided to choose my attitude. All right. Now, it may not last forever, but when you start the day or the week and you think, okay, what am I going to write about? What am I going to think about? And you are a natural born upbeat person, but you have a little zinger you throw in there too with your style, which I like. But basically speaking, I'm trying, and of all people, you know where I found it? Talking to the guy they call Sour, David Moulton, who does the show with Allie, who's sweet and sour, and he's called by the listeners there Sour, but he, but anyway, we talked about the difficulty in finding something to write about that's not dour and sour and whatever. And as a columnist, you know this because you write a regular column. It's not somebody just writes a column once every 6 months, but a regular column. And David Moulton wrote a column 3 times a week for the Fort Myers News Press. Did you know that? Yeah, he did. And he's pretty knowledgeable. My point was, I said, all right, you're the one who's talking about, Florida's got a long way to go, the show us, prove it, etc. And I get it. I said, and we're called sunshine pumpers if we try to find good things. Tell me what would you write if you were writing right now? And I pressed him on it, and he finally said, okay, here's what I would do. If I were writing a column today, I would say to the fans, go with me on this. Take this ride with me. There are some things going to happen this year that you're going to like with this Gator football team. And good stuff can happen. And there's no reason why you shouldn't buy into it because, yeah, it's true that, that they got to prove it. But they got some good players there. And they got they got some games they can win. And they got some pretty good coaches. And this thing could happen. So he spun this thing around. And I says, you know what? I like it. I'm going to take it. So I wrote a column on that. A minute later on, I got it from him. So you know the deal. You do it every day. You have to face it every day. What's it like for you?
Well, with the football team, during the season, when there's actual evidence, that they're doing poorly, you can't pump the sunshine. But this is the time of year where it's almost like the fantasy league time. You can be negative if you want, or you can be positive, and both are legitimate stances to take. And maybe I'm getting a little too I don't know, Pollyanna in my old age, but if you have a choice of being a negative or a positive person, why not be positive?
All right, bingo. That's exactly what I tried to say, and didn't say it very well. I got a shot at going either way. Yeah. It's not terrible. Look at the good things that are happening to the Gators right this minute. I mean, my gosh, the softball team was amazing. Look at the track team, what's happening here. Even the lacrosse team, all of a sudden there's some big name recruits starting to show up at Billy Napier's doorstep. We'll talk about Cormany McLean a little bit later on. And some of the band now they really have their rosters set. They don't really have any scholarship spots, but he's trying to find a creative way to bring other players aboard. So suddenly people are saying they want to be here. If he was a basketball team, came off a good year, disappointing finish, but even if they get their players back, are going to be really good next year. Baseball team, disappointing year, unusual. Overall, and I was telling somebody the other day, inadvertently, so many good things happen around the University of Florida that you stumbled upon. And I was on Shane's show this morning. I said I had to laugh at the story I read about Norm Carlson. R.I.P. to the great Norm Carlson. We lost this past
No
Friday,
doubt.
and I have a bite here from Coach Spurrier to play about him too. Um, and Norm lived in the neighborhood with Pepper Rogers, a name you might not know, but you heard. He was the offensive coordinator on Ray Graves and was Steve Spurrier's coach. Anyway, the point is that they were laughing, telling stories about Norm. They were talking about the fact that Pepper and Norm were complaining because there's a guy in the neighborhood at a garage apartment playing all this lousy music loud at nighttime. Some guy named Tom Petty.
Whatever became of him?
I don't know, nothing. But my point is, everywhere you turn, there's somebody, and I don't know what word to use, but except to say that there's many, many great things about the University of Florida. So you can find good things, although it's hard to sugarcoat it when things are not going well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like this time of year, when it comes to football, I mean, you're not going to predict they're going to go undefeated because you'd lose your credibility there. But you can be positive and say and make a realistic case for 8-9 wins without being committed to the insane asylum.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it'd be pumping way too much sunshine if you were thinking this team it's on the cusp of greatness. But it gets tired saying this is a rebuilding project. And I was in Barcelona once, and talk about they have you heard of the 1,000-year cathedral? They've been building it for 1,000 years. It's and they're still building it. That's the whole thing. And
I know some roads like that in Florida.
Yeah. And I don't think what Billy Napier wanted was quite the 1,000-year rebuild that they had over this thing in Barcelona, but maybe 500 years, or maybe minimum 3. Mm-hmm. So we're reaching the bare minimum now of the 3rd year. And so I think that all this Sturm and Drang, is that how you pronounce it? Sturm and Drang? I don't know. It's just a German term that I always liked, Strum and Drang, but because it just sounds
good to me.
Yeah, Strum and Drang of negativity. If you want to make the case that 2 wins, 3 wins, whatever, okay. But I think that this time of year you can look yourself in the mirror and not say you're a complete sunshine pumper by saying 8 wins is possible. Not I don't know if I'd bet. I'm more in because although you usually ask this prediction in a couple of months as we're near the season, on the over and under, I'd go in the 7.5 right now, which if you take a look back at Florida history and you think, man, it's not good that you think a 7.5 win season is good. But that's where you are, and it's better than a 6-win season, and it's trending in the right direction.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think there's some hope there, which is the thing we all just need a little something to hang on to. And I like what you said earlier. I'm going to bring Rob in here in just a second. What you said earlier is so true. It's the time of year when you can choose to be either. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's okay, especially on football.
Yeah.
And you can use hopeful or you can disappoint. I mean, there's certainly things to be fixed. But look, David, you've been around long enough, not as long as I have, to know that the blood sport of the off season has always been picking apart the Florida Gator football team. Way back when it was a big topic in the 40s, so the governors were running for a race, making pledges to have better teams in Gainesville. It's always been. It's kind of like politics. It's, people sit around barrels and general stores and talk about Gator football. It's always been that way. You talk about it, grouse about it, complain about it, whatever. And it's part of what it is, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that people sort of lose track of that. Is that win or lose, just the experience and could you imagine what the last century had been like for people if there was no Florida football? I mean, just from a social,
what would we do? Yeah, right. Yeah. Talk politics,
just from a social aspect.
Yeah.
Even if it's a bad season, well, it's the camaraderie you get, or just the connections of going there on a Saturday and just being at your old school, or maybe you didn't go there, just seeing people, and just the amount of conversation that it has fueled over the years, just to keep people entertained. For better or worse, it's always there.
It's always there. It's right. You're exactly right.
And the beauty is, unlike politics, that they can stink, but it really doesn't affect your wallet unless you're paying. First of all, it's because you voluntarily let it affect your wallet.
Exactly. Well, let me just speaking of wallets, I'll go ahead and tell you about our sponsors. Our sponsor tonight, I talked to him today. Jeffrey Meldon is having a Scholar Athlete event Friday night in Gainesville. It's been doing it for a lot of years, giving away scholarships to players, female and male, who have been outstanding in academics and sports. I will be there on Friday night. As a matter of fact, my wife Dawn and I will be joining them to give a little short talk. What will I say about academics? Yeah, maybe I can spell it. I don't know. But the point is that, the scholarship is so important in academics in today in the world. So we'll be talking about that with Jeffrey Meldon. And he, of course, is in the lawyer business. We want to remind you, he forgets sometimes to tell people, if you'd like to have your case reviewed or you need some help in some injury, problem, situation you've had, an accident, he's the guy to call, Jeffrey Meldon Law, where they won't back down. So Meldon Law. Let's go over to the orange and blue room. This is a color they have at Auburn also. So it works this guy as well here. And talk Mr. Rob Browne. Good evening, Rob.
Hey guys, I'm listening to what David and both of y'all are saying, and talking about Florida football, it is the year round. It's the blood sport, picking apart, whatever. But just looking at it from my view, Greg McElroy spoke in the spring Memphis Touchdown Club spring speaker series last night. And, every time when you're in the presence, which y'all are all the time because you're true grit journalists, you learn some new stuff. I didn't realize McElroy was invited at Alabama as a preferred walk-on because Tebow was their man. And Tebow decided to go to Florida.
Yeah.
So he goes, the 2009 rematch with Florida was real personal to me. He goes, if you don't like Tim Tebow, you probably don't like Old Yeller, your grandparents, and the American flag. But it was just interesting to hear that. And also him talking about the impact of the SEC. He said, in the NFL, I didn't have a long career, but I made it, but we were out on the West Coast. And it was always fun when you played in San Diego because you'd have Saturday pretty much all to yourself. So it was Iron Bowl weekend. And I had some teammates, Andre Smith and a couple other guys that played with me go watch it. And these other guys from Notre Dame and Southern Cal and some other places said they wanted to go watch it to see. He said, y'all are going to get to see what real football is like. And he said, oh, yeah, there's nothing like Southern Cal. He said after the Kick Six game, they were all like some Billy Graham revival. I yield. But if it wasn't for y'all writing these stories, and I'm not a sunshine pumper, I just get fired up about every day. You will get out of life what you accept. I love what y'all do. And it makes me madder than a wet hen. I'll just be nice. You need access because what holds coaches accountable, and I've learned this over the years. You talk about Norm Carlson, another Mount Rushmore, SID. I don't call them media relations directors, but that's what I love about this show, man. Y'all get into content. But I'll just say this. We talked about Florida last night. We talked about a lot of stuff. I'm with David Whitley. 8 games, I could see that. And you can't win 9 if you don't win the first 8. I see this guy Lagway, McElroy, he's big time. He's right in y'all. He's the biggest recruit you signed at Florida, in my opinion, since Tim Tebow. That's how. If I'm a Gator fan, I'm getting excited about nobody's giving y'all a chance this year. I don't care what that schedule looks like right now. That's assuming all those teams that are supposed to be so good aren't going to have any defections, any problems. And what are the odds of that happening?
Yeah, a lot covered right there, and
it always.
Yeah, and we still kind of talk about. I want to get back to the original theme when I talked about you and David and I talked about you can pick your attitude in the springtime when you start your show or your column. You can actually go either way and be okay. because there's nothing definitive. You're not going to be able to do it wrong. A lot of
Yeah.
great things happening in smaller chapters, and things happen for your schools, not the least of which has been Florida's performance at the SEC tournament. And I've been getting egg all over my face. You can see it on my face because about 5-6 weeks ago, Shane Matthews talked about what was going on around the league and around Florida, and I said, well, Florida's baseball team is losing too many midweek games to me for my taste, and I said the softball team at this point has not proven it's elite, and I thought Shane was going to come to the screen at me when I said that. What do you mean? I said, well, at this point in time, they have had an elite program, but the way they've been playing at this point, I couldn't call them elite. Well, I got ripped to shreds by people on the show. And of course, you know what happened to the softball team. They were not only elite, they were super elite in the last 10 games. And of course, I had to take my medicine. I was trying to say, I wasn't going to go back and say, I meant only back then. I did say it. They were not an elite team. Boy, they are the personification and the definition, David, of elite after those last 10 games.
Yeah. If I didn't know better, I'd say, yeah, you just wanted to stir things up. But I know that you're not a guy, you're not a troll, I think that at that point, you probably believed what you were saying. And you got a reaction. Although I know you didn't do it just so people.
I didn't really want it. I've been getting
later and say, buddy, you idiot. You don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah.
We've heard that a few times.
Yeah, sure. And you're in the business where if you're going to write, I mean, you've probably written or been on the radio, 10 million hours over your career, and along the way you've probably said some things that didn't turn out to be right. You're not going to go undefeated.
You think? No, I mean, really,
never.
I want to be like Dan Jenkins when he signed up and to become a writer in Sports Illustrated. The publisher told him, your expense accounts can never be too big. And he said, if anybody messes with your copy, I'll kill them. And he said, you can't get enough hate mail. That's my kind of boss right there. So anyway, that's what it is. It's a whole different. Let's get back to the Norm Carlson thing for a second. Yeah. This is the end of a conversation I had with Spurrier last night. I didn't play it, about how, and you know the story probably pretty well, David. Maybe not so much Rob. But one of the things that Carlson did, and by the way, it is true that the runner-up for Norm Carlson's job was me. I was, in fact, waiting in the room, not literally, but and if he didn't take that job, what a travesty it would have been. It would have been me. I was on my way to going taking a job in Nashville. But the point is that Carlson did something brilliant. When he took over as SID in '63, he inherited Steve Spurrier the following fall. And he saw what he had. And we all saw what he had the first 2 years. The third year, he only didn't play as a freshman. The second year, they lost to Missouri in the Sugar Bowl, the famous game where they went for 2 points 3 times and missed it all 3 and lost 2018. But he's still the only player to win the Miller Digby Trophy MVP for the game on the losing side. And Carlson knew he had something spectacular on his hands. And the following year, he went to work on, this was unheard of. He got the idea of talking to people. He got a bunch of postcards and started mailing them to media guys. Hey, watch out for Steve Spurrier, blah, blah, blah. Well, it kind of worked, and Steve had a little momentum going. Here's the last part of this clip from Coach Spurrier.
You got to get your votes lined up, I guess. And Norm and a bunch of writers that covered Florida, I think all you guys, especially you and Tom McEwen, did a good job getting the word out, so forth.
Yeah, Tom did a great job. All right, so now I don't know any particulars. I know the family is getting together on the information now about what they're going to do and services and whatever. And I know you said you talked to him 2 weeks ago, and you had thought you'd see him again. Talk about your last time you talked to him and your memories of that. And
I'm upset I didn't go back down there and see him. He sounded fine when I talked to him. said, when you're here, come on by, and this, that, and the other. So obviously, I wish I had gone 2 or 3 weeks ago. But anyway, yeah, we wish, Jerry and I wish we'd have gone by there, but we didn't. So we said our, of course, we wouldn't have said our goodbyes because he sounded good on the phone. And then, I guess when your time's up, it's, you don't gradually ease on out. Sometimes you just go. And that must have been how it happened with Norm.
Well, 90 years old, you had a good run. Listen, it's like that old saying, everybody wants to go to heaven, but not tonight. So as we get older, and you've had a couple of losses the last couple of years. Alan Trammell, your very close friend, who was a teammate, and of course, then Bill Carr is also your teammate. Talk about those two.
Okay, mate, just changed my gate again.
Uh-oh, you got to go. I understand.
Well, it's only a couple down today, but shit. Yesterday.
Well, Coach let a little word slip out there. But anyway, the bottom line, he was waiting at the gate, and he was trying to get a flight out of there and the weather, and they were making announcements as he was talking to me on the phone. So Coach is not really happy. Anyway, it was a good interview. He talked about Norm. He was really sad he didn't get a chance to see Norm before he passed, but he did talk to him. So anyway, my point was not to bring up the sadness, although we certainly miss him. And like you said, we call them SIDs, the really great ones who made life so much better for everybody. Not just made your job easier, made it more fun, rewarding. You had relationships, you had trust. And to be honest with you, I don't even know if there's such a thing as an SID anymore, and I don't even know how there's somebody you call about getting your seats in a press box, whatever. But my point is, I guess, is to say, I really appreciate people like Norm now. And I appreciate what those people have done. And in our lifetime, we've had some special people who made our jobs better and richer, and the relationships that we've had forever. And I value that. And getting back, David, to the point of choosing your attitude, I want to try to show a little more gratitude about the good fortune I've had, the people I've known, the relationships I've had, and just being around Florida sports has been great. I mean, it's been not everybody gets to go cover a team like Florida. So, am I getting too homerish, David?
No, when it comes to Norm, I sort of wish that remember the bracelets. You don't see as much anymore. The WWJD, what would Jesus do bracelets?
Mm-hmm.
I would like to have had some WWN do. What would Norm do? And hand them out to every SID in America, or in really any PR person in America, in any business, because they would whatever company, whatever team, whatever university that they represent would be better off if they thought, well, how would Norm handle this? Because he was just the master, as you said, of relationships and knowing and putting himself in the writer's position and how can I help not just writers but anybody. That's what made him so special. TV or radio or just you've been hearing from just students of his who, I mean, and it's true, nobody ever said a bad thing about Norman Carlson, and there's a reason for that. He didn't give him a reason to.
Yeah, I know, Rob. You were in the business yourself. You were assistant associate AID at Auburn, which is where.
I got to be up there. David Housel let me come in high school, do all the games, and in my freshman year. But then, my pledge brothers over in the drunk tank after 5 games, you couldn't cheer. But I did other things. I wrote for the Plainsman. I started sidelines on the radio station there on Weagle. But I'll say this, like you just mentioned about Steve Spurrier. Look what Norm Carlson helped. The SID is the gatekeeper. I got chewed out by David Housel so badly one time. Most people would have been in tears, but I just said, "You're right." He goes, "You don't cheer or talk about the other school. You are welcoming them with open arms. They are in our press box. It's just sacred." He said, "Don't say, you hope we beat that word. Don't do it." Just things like Buddy Davidson, Reba Gulledge, people that run those offices. Nothing compared to what y'all done. But you're right. Treat people like you want to be treated. Norm Carlson, that name, hell, I know that name just because people I know had so much respect for him. but they're the gatekeepers and the media people. Sometimes, you might write a story that they don't like, but they didn't cancel you. It's free press. And I loved the press conferences. It'd be the electronic media, the radio over here, TV over here, and the print media over here. And I always remember seeing guys like John Pruitt and Philip Marshall, and you'd see Furman Bisher, over there in the corner. When I was working at Channel 3 in Columbus, we covered Auburn. There was just these respect. And then weekends at Stillwater's, the same thing y'all did. You knew the coaches. I mean, you knew them. And buddy, I go back to this every time I'm on here. That Florida coach left last year. He said, I would say I'm going to miss you, but I never knew you. I mean, buddy, you're a trip, man. And David, just the one time I got to meet Jack Harrison, I still can remember it. David Housel, after the Auburn-Florida game, 1981, Auburn won on that field goal or not field goal, 14-12. And, man, after the game, I went out there, and Jack Harrison and David Housel opened up the trunk of his car and party on, Garth. But the stories that you got to hear from those people, and you look up to them, you respect them, because they're not – they wrote what they thought, and they spoke the truth. And I don't like the way now I think a lot of the media relations people, they're in the telling you no. I say open up practice. What the hell? What do you got to lose? It's all about when you call the play during the game, David.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that is they're just doing what they're told, unfortunately.
I know.
And it comes from above, and I sometimes they go to bat for you, but they're just swinging a noodle because it doesn't matter what they say.
And it's tough to face the reality is that we're not as important to them as we used to be.
Yeah.
So therefore, they spend less time on us, more time on NIL and getting players and recruiting, whatever. It's okay. It's the way it is. It's just the evolution. The one story I loved that Carlson was told, and we got Loren Meadows standing by here in a minute. And David, hope you can stay a little bit longer. I mean, Michael, David. Looking at your picture and seeing Michael Burton's name, David. The great story, the Suge Jordan Bear Bryant rivalry was so understated, but deep down they see, as Rob, Bryant was such a tough guy to go up against, and Suge was such a nice person, but also a great competitor, and he had his moments. And Norm told the story. One time when he first got there, Norm was pretty well, he liked everybody. So one day he was talking to Coach Jordan wanting to practice. And he said Alabama had won over the weekend and Auburn had won. And Norm said, I said to Coach Jordan, he says, well, it's nice to see that Alabama won this weekend. And he stopped in his tracks and shrugged and said, Norman, ain't a damn thing ever happened good to Alabama was good for Auburn.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's how it was. As you know, you were there.
Yeah. So, I mean, Ralph Jordan Jr. is a good friend of mine. He lives in Norris, Tennessee, spends about half of every month in Auburn. But he also can remember when Kentucky would come to play Auburn in basketball, he'd answer the phone and go, Junior, it's Adolph Rupp here to Kentucky. Coming down there to play Auburn in that sports barn. He goes, see if your daddy can take me fishing. They got the big bass down there. Well, he never told Coach Rupp he was taking him to the AU School of Fisheries with those 10-pound bass. He never told him. He said, I was a kid. I got to sit in the den, play on the floor with Coach Rupp, and him and my daddy would talk about football and basketball, but they never talked about the war. Suge landed in North Africa, Sicily. Omaha Beach was wounded. And then they were decommissioning his unit in Fort Lewis in Seattle. And Miss Jordan had bought a brand new Chrysler, drove it all the way across the country to get him. And they asked for volunteers to go to Okinawa. And Suge Jordan said, I'll go, and went over there and fought there. And she had to drive that automobile all the way across the country by herself. And Ralph Jr. said, to the day she died, and I know in heaven above, she still has never forgiven the United States Army for that. And but those were tough men. Yeah. And how about the pictures of them all smoking cigarettes on the sidelines, wearing cutoff sweatshirts?
The greatest generation.
They are.
Sure. Yeah.
They're awesome.
All right, I'm going to tell you about Titan MRI. Then we're going to go get Coach Meadows. And we're going to speak a little bit about these recruits. It's good. It goes on 24/7. You know, it is. First of all, sad to hear Patrick Young is back in the hospital. Get better, man. We're going to be all right. I played last week. And so he says, I'm back. He says, I miss these four walls and being awoken every 3 hours. I hope you get better, buddy. Get back out there soon. Also, I know you guys are all geeked up for it. I remember when I used to be. The NFL schedules will be out tomorrow. Will you be up early watching that, Rob? Taking all that stuff down at 7 o'clock? I know what it's like to be in a market where you have a team like the Denver Broncos that are so dominant in the schedule and it's everything. But pardon me, I might get up tomorrow morning, David, to watch that one. So,
yeah, well, you and me both. So.
Yeah. Titan MRI is North Central Florida's newest premier independent diagnostic testing MRI facility. We'll let you know that they're now opening and serving Greater Gainesville, North Central Florida, focused on you, the patient, with a great customer service. They will give you personalized service. If you can't get there at a certain time or you can't go during the week, they'll make you a night or a weekend reservation to get your MRI. How's that? And by the way, if you don't have insurance, no problem. They'll take a card or cash if you want to do that. They have modern MRI equipment. They're aimed at making the experience better for you. They have a larger opening in the bores, which gives you high-strength MRI units and allow comfortable scanning for potential claustrophobic patients. I know if you've ever been in one, I've had claustrophobia. Something that's very considerate, I think. So anyway, patients who need an MRI need to know about Titan MRI. Go online, check them out, titanmri.com. Now open and ready to serve you in North Central Florida. All right, guys, we have a little recruiting going on here as we do year-round now. And what have you heard, first of all, David, about Cormani McClain, the guy that everybody wanted not long ago, now suddenly has left Boulder, is in the portal, has had a visit and conversation with Florida. We don't know all the particulars that were mentioned, but apparently there's been some discussions, if you read the Twitter and what have you, about the possibility of him being a so-called walk-on at Florida because they got their roster set and paying for his own tuition, which is not that expensive, by the way. It could easily be done, I guess, in an NIL deal. So what do you know about him, David? And what do you think of him? Do you think it's a good idea to go after him? And what are your thoughts on getting a 5-star that you missed the first time around?
Well, I can't say I have any firsthand experience with him, but certainly have read a ton about him over the years and talked to people about him. And from a talent standpoint, this was a top 5 player for a while. In any position last year. I think he was number 1 cornerback, and everybody wanted him, and everybody assumed he's going to go to Florida. They had been recruiting him since the cradle, pretty much, and then things went sideways at the end. Miami supposedly swooped in, and then he didn't go there, and then he was brought under the Dion spell and went out there. And what you hear is that there's some growing up that needed to be done. It's funny. I've always thought Dion sort of needed to grow up, and he never will. But I think he tried the tough love routine, which probably was what Cormani McClain needed, and it didn't work. And for whatever reason, I mean, you hear that he there's no specific incident, but he's just an immature kid in some ways, which means he's acting like an 18-year-old acts, pretty much, and he just didn't take to what was going out there. But it is quite the fall if he ends up being from where he was last year on signing day, where they were rolling out red carpet anywhere he wanted to go in America to where he would be listed as a walk-on somewhere. And it would be a humbling experience. And I think it might be good for him in a way, just to come out here and say, and this is what you need. And I think if he does come here, I don't think it's why not? I mean, in Florida's position, you don't have anything to lose. I don't think he's not like you're bringing in a disruptor. I don't think who's going to ruin the whole culture. I think the culture is not going to change. He'll just have to change for the culture. And I think that Billy Napier will make that plain to him. Here it says, if you come here, you got to buy in and mind your P's and Q's, and we're going to coach you and coach you hard. And you got to want that. And so it's just interesting to see. I mean, in a way, he's one of those cautionary tales about NIL. That a guy who probably was maybe it went to his head a little bit, and now it's a weird thing. He's playing for he'll be at his third school in less than a year if you count the Miami thing too. And that you used to never hear that, but now it's common. But I think it would probably be good for him. And just not so much from a football standpoint, although that's paramount, but just from a personal growth standpoint to come back and get in under a guy like Billy Napier who will stress the being a responsible kid and growing up and acting mature and minding your P's and Q's.
Loren, good evening to you. It can happen to anybody, especially a young kid who's got everything in the way he wants it. Making decisions that age. What's your take on Cormani McClain and the situation at Florida with him?
Well, I think Florida be happy to have him. I think that he's, with everything said, he still started 4 football games for Colorado, so he found his way onto the field in Pac-12 play. And I think it's one of those situations where it's 2 sides to every story. And I think as we learn a little bit more about the Colorado football program, 40 plus kids have transferred out of that program, in the off season. So, I'm a fan of Deion as a football player, but, when you look at it from a standpoint of a coach that, hadn't made a home visit since he's been at Colorado, seems to kind of want to do things more curtailed towards his kids and maybe Travis Hunter versus the betterment of the Colorado program long term, I'm going to give Cormani McClain kind of a pass. And the fact that, his growing pains really aren't any different from maybe any other college freshman, except for the fact that they play for a larger than life coach. So, you look at some of the comments that Cormani McClain's mom has had, and I'm not saying, parents are going to side with their kids, but I think we should temper maybe a little bit, what may be deemed his attitude and that kind of thing. And maybe that he's coming from a culture that just didn't fit him. Lakeland's a top-notch high school football program that has always had, top-notch players. And surely they have some discipline within the program. And, I think that, it's just kind of like Graham Mertz in a lot of ways. Maybe a change of scenery is just best. And you're talking about a kid from, South Central Florida, Lakeland area, going to Boulder, Colorado. It's just a lot of things that go on with that. So I think, coming back closer to home, probably at a school that if you took NIL out of it was his first choice in the first place. He seemed to really be into Florida when things really got going. And now he's here. I think that, if he comes in as a walk-on, I don't think he'll be a walk-on by the time the fall rolls around just because of attrition and injuries and things like that. I think they'll find at least a full ride for a year for him from somewhere, and those are year-to-year scholarships anyway. So I think they'll find something for him. But you talk about somebody, if he lives up to his potential, now you got 3 solid corners with with Devin, Jason, and now Cormani.
You got three NFL corners, really.
Yeah, you got basically three NFL, so you got 3. You're in pretty good shape with the additions and safety. So it just adds to what should and needs to be an improved defense. We said it a million times on the show, as much as people worry about quarterback and receiver and running back and those kind of things, if Florida doesn't stop anybody, especially on third down, they got to find a way to get off the field. And obviously adding a top-level corner, at least on potential, and let Will Harris kind of sink his teeth into him a little bit with some of that NFL pedigree. I mean, I think it could be good for Florida and for Cormont.
Yeah, and for a quick comment before I go to Rob and get his general overall league view of that, Elijah Badger, the guy that's at Arizona State and looking at Arizona, played some ball. He's also paid a visit this week, a wide receiver, and a pretty good one. What do you know about him? What do you hear about that? Do you think that's a good fit?
Yeah, Badgers, once again, you got a plug and play guy. I mean, somebody that I think he had over almost 900 yards receiving at Arizona State. And like we said a week ago, if you look at the track record with Arizona State receivers coming to Florida, it's pretty good. And Badger's a guy that can help you in the return game, just like Pearsall was, and somebody that's proven at a high level. So you drop him in with some of the young guys that Billy Gonzalez is pretty excited about. He and I had a conversation at the baseball game a couple weeks ago, and I mean he's really excited about his young people. They got basically Graham Mertz's buddy at receiver, and as well. And I think that they're just another addition. I mean, anytime you can add what I call plug and play people day one that provide instant depth, but not only instant depth, but should be able to provide results right off the bat. I think you can't go wrong. And you look at at the big scheme of things, that's one thing you could maybe give Billy Napier a pound on is he's really gone out the last 2 to 3 years and found some guys that
been a little slow on the uptake, but it
without-
seems like it's coming together now. You're
Yeah,
right.
but I mean, really slow, but really not. I mean, you look at you go back to his first year here with Montrell Johnson and others, and then you throw in the Ricky Pearsalls, but yeah, now it's starting to pick up a little bit more, and those are guys that the Gators have to have.
The ones they brought in all were good players, yeah, for
right.
sure.
Yeah.
All right,
So,
Rob, I know you listen to this, Rob. From a global standpoint, you cover the league a lot more. It's a fluid situation for all the coaches right now, but they got to get down to your 85. And now at some point, you got to make choices. What's been going on around the league the last couple of weeks in terms of the NIL and all the stuff in the transfer portal that you've been talking about?
Well, like we had this morning, Rodney Orr, Tyler Insider, Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Alabama had 3 leave in the spring. No, they had 29 leave when Nick Saban retired, but a lot of those were going to be gone anyway. But only 3 in the spring. Ole Miss had 3 or 4. I think Auburn had 4. So numbers a lot lower in the spring. But I think a recurring theme that we're hearing from people that cover all these different schools is, and it is so obvious, donor fatigue. You cannot keep going back to these people again and again and again. The big donors, they're getting beat up. They want to see a collective. But now what's about to happen is the universities are going to start paying these student athletes as employees. SMU did it a couple of weeks ago. Everybody on the team gets $35,000. If you go get an NIL deal on your own, good for you. But you're all getting $35,000. So you're starting to see these collectives are going to be around for another year or two. The universities are going to, instead of having half a dozen people run a lean, efficient collective, you're going to have 50 or 60 university employees, state employees, government employees, build a $75 million building, and most of the money that's brought in will be an administrative cost. And the student athletes are going to end up just getting a little bit compared to what they're getting right now. But I'm hearing it from people that cover every school out there. The donors are already you just can't keep it. Ohio State spent over $30 million on this class. And they got Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss, Caleb Downs from Alabama, Senia, the quarterback who was from California, going to Alabama. They can't keep that up every year. It's like going down a 20-mile canoe trip with a class 4 or 5 rapid every 500 yards. You can't keep it up. So you're going to see pullback.
I apologize. The noise I hear in the bay is something going on out there with the boat or something. If you can't hear me, I apologize. Hey, I'm going to switch it up here now. This is something that we rarely do. We're going to talk about a sport not involved in college and talking about a sport that some people don't like. But as we speak, the PGA of America is putting on their event this week, and it is right in the heart of this whole deal with the LIV, the LIV, and now PGA. And I've heard 3 or 4 interviews today. I'm trying to get a handle on exactly what is going on, because on one hand, you hear Tiger say things not as bad as you guys in the media are making it. Then I'm hearing people saying, that John Rahm, what's he smoking? He says, "Hey, look, this is all good. I'm a member." He said, "Here's Rahm's comments today. See, you guys keep saying the other side, but I'm still a PGA Tour member, whether it's suspended or not. I still want to support the PGA Tour. I think that's an important distinction to make. I don't feel like I'm on the other side. I'm just not playing there. That's all, at least personally." What is he talking about? Of course, he's on the other side. He took $500 million, basically, to the purposes to hopefully snuff out the PGA Tour one day. He can't have it both ways. And this is something that it depends on who you talk to. Georgia Spieth said, "No, it's all good. We're making progress. We have all these committees." I don't know. I'm so tired of everything in sports being a negotiation. But
Yeah.
there should be some good golf played. I somehow would. I hope this thing will work out, but I don't think it'll ever be the same, guys. After what's happened with Liv, what's happened with the sellout, and what's cost some of these guys their careers. I see today Rory McIlroy had officially became divorced. He's been under a lot of pressure, obviously, trying to litigate this thing between 2 groups, and it can get awfully nasty. So let's take that for a moment and then give me one name of one person that you think might win the PGA at Valhalla in Louisville this week. Who wants to go first? David?
The name is easy just because, heck, he wins every time he goes out there. It is Scheffler. And I hate to go with the easy pick, but no, I don't. I love going for the easy pick because it's easy. And took the week off, took 2 weeks off. Wife had a baby, and now he's back out there. And I don't know why, unless for he had some sort of weird experience in the maternity room that's haunting him as he tees off or dances as he putts. I think he'll just sort of pick up where he left off. Yeah, but you're right. Golf used to be a refuge from the business side of sport. I mean, it's certainly the business side of it, but it wasn't what people talked about. Nobody talked about contracts and all that or agents and all that. Now that's all they talk about. And when they get together at these big majors, it becomes a topic because it's the only time that they get together, And you're right. I don't know what John Rahm's been smoking when he says I still support him, and it'd be like we have Cormani McLean saying I still support Colorado, but I'm going to play for One.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I'm a Democrat, but I still support the Republicans. Sure. Okay. Listen, guys, I'm asking for a pass from my listeners, but David Arnoff is already complaining about, oh, no, not golf. Come on, David. Come on, David. You can handle it. All right, it's a little golf. And so, all right, so Loren, does the whole live thing still bother you about golf, and who you got for me at Valhalla?
Yeah, I mean, it bothers me, but it is what it is. It's the same thing we've been talking about. I mean, in every sport, it's money, and the money is what rules everything. And you taking the money and run, and it just lets you know that anybody can be bought. So, with that said, I'm gonna go with what the odds makers think, and I'm gonna go with Scotty Scheffler to win the PGA down in Louisville.
Yeah, it's going all chalk. Okay. Bottom line is this, that well, I'll save that comment for later. Let's let Rob go next.
I like Max Homa. I just like his name, and I'm going to pick him. But he's pretty damn good.
He
but
is.
I'm with y'all.
Run. Really good run.
I would love to write a story if I was writing a blog about. Remember when we talked about a football player because he made a game-saving tackle with blood coming down his face and with a cracked tibia, or the basketball player that dove 6 rows into the stands for a loose ball, or a baseball player like Kirk Gibson. Can you believe it? Jack Buck's great call, coming out there injured. No, all we hear about is their contracts. I mean, that's all we hear about with them. Okay. And I didn't know this, Loren. Deion Sanders, he is the epitome of mommy ball and daddy ball. Who spends the night at the coach's house Friday night is the starting 5 the next day. I have no time for that. I know y'all are Gators. Deion, I think he did a lot for football last year in terms of getting a lot of eyeballs on Colorado. But that is, signing up for Colorado football is like rowing out to the Titanic for cocktails and happy hour. It's a losing proposition. Boulder. I mean, God, you lived out there, Brendan. I've learned a lot about Boulder from my kids going out there to visit friends and from Brendan. It's not going to happen. It's all about who can name anyone on the Colorado team other than Deion Sanders' 2 kids and Travis Hunter from Sewanee, Georgia, Collins Hill High School, who was the number 1 player in the country, committed to Florida State. And by the way, is Deion still welcome in Tallahassee? But anyway, that's what ADHD does to you. I'm all over the place.
All right, that's good. All right, here's some of the other favorites. Brooks Koepka. We forget about him not being out there. McElroy, who won last week with his partner. Not a good frame of mind. Victor Hovland. Someone you keep expecting to show up. Victor Hovland. Yes, you've got, you mentioned Max Homa. I like him too, the way he's playing also. Here's one that's controversial. I like this guy, even though he's nuts. Bryson DeChambeau. I think he's a fun guy to watch. Dr. Frankenstein, always trying to dance cigarette. So there's a few for you right there. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for good night and good comments. Appreciate it. David, thank you for staying the whole week. What you writing about, David?
My pleasure. I just want to say, you mentioned Patrick Young.
Yeah.
He's the ultimate guy who he can be negative or positive. And he has decided to turn really, one of the most negative situations that someone could put into a positive. And you can't be around him for, 5 seconds without saying, man, I wish I had that attitude about everything.
So true. And I was with him last week, and I had dinner at Spurrier's with him. And I made a comment that he'll never have been more popular than now because of what he represents. You talk about true grit, Rob, what he's been through with and the story behind what he's doing. You love the guy's story. You love what he represents. And you're absolutely right, David. We're all pulling for him.
I want him on the show anytime you can send him my way. He's on my prayer list. I'm serious. Love that guy's story. I read the story. He never complains. He is the 95% of life is showing up with a positive attitude. How you respond, we got to get him well. And please, I want him on the show anytime. I would love to have him. He's one of my favorite people in media. I don't give a damn where he plays. He's just a good person. I like him.
Loren Meadows has all the pull. You have to ask him.
Loren, you come on with him.
I do want to say this, Rob. I'll tell you this. I spent the weekend in Auburn, Alabama at the SEC softball tournament, and it was my first time to Auburn. Wonderful place, man. I mean, I was blown away by, and I probably should as a Gator fan, but it was a bucket list to go down there and see the Pat Dye statues and all that.
Yeah.
But the Auburn people were genuine. Toomer's Corner. I've never had a better.
He went out rolling, Rob.
Cup of lemonade. you know. So they. But yeah, I mean, it was an awesome time. Obviously, the Gators won, so it made it a better time. But the Auburn people rolled out, and like I said, I've never had better lemonade than what I had at Toomer's Drugs. So.
Well, I love hearing that. And that's what we're supposed to do, man. I mean, my wife says I'm crazy, but I get as excited about all these other schools. I couldn't do the show if I didn't, but love hearing that. And Pat Dye Jr. is texting me right now. I'm telling you, I love this show because y'all are genuinely good people, and you love covering what you do. And you also learn a hell of a lot on this show. And I know David Arnoff watches our show in the morning. I'm not going to talk golf in the morning, David, but I do love golf.
David's my buddy. He lives out here in Northwest Florida. He's a physician friend. He's a good person. He can't have everything you want. So come on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and by the way, Loren, great job out there at Auburn. The stuff you wrote, the stories you covered for them, and what a story it was. That softball team. That's one of the great. I said something this morning to Shane about what a great run. He said, "What do you mean run?" He said they were going to win it all. I said, "No, they weren't. Winning 9 out of 10 like they did. What were they?
Well,
RPI? Whatever they were to the 4th ranked team in the country."
Right.
And
Well, buddy, you were selling them short though all year. I mean, they were. I mean, they've been in the top half of the SEC. I mean, they were picked 8th to start, but you were selling them short a little bit. So I can see why Shane gave you a little.
Well, I readily accepted the fact I wasn't ready to call them a lead when they lost the series, and I grant you I was wrong, but I didn't see it coming. If anybody who raises their hand and says they knew this was going to happen, I'm sorry. I'm not buying it. But congratulations. I know you saw it firsthand, so if you tell me it was legit, I know it was legit.
It was. They hit the ball extremely well. They were the top hitting team in the SEC all year, and the one girl that had struggled in the lineup, Mia Williams, hit 2 bombs that early in the game, and I think it really shook. It kind of shakes a team and a pitcher when the number 9 hitter hits an 82.4 mile per hour terminal velocity home run one game, and then a 264 foot shot in the next one. So I mean, I think it crippled both Texas A&M and Missouri early when she went yard, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah. All right, so let me wrap it up here with this, and I'll say good job right in Auburn. Your producer's crazy, Rob. So I'll say good night, guys. Thanks for a great job, and I'll catch up with you later in the week. All right, David,
thanks so much.
Rob Browne, Loren Meadows.
Appreciate it, everybody.
See you at the gym, Dave.
All right. I just want to tell folks about Red Medical Research, and I'll let's see here. All right, here we go. Like to wind up with them because they mean so much to our community. And they want you to know about the importance of these clinical trials they have. It's so important because this is the ability to bring new trial medications and things that hang on one second. People testing. They looking out for our health. They want you to take part in these particular things, and particularly the trials, because clinical trials is how they do things to market. I encourage you to go to rinstar.net, look them up, read out their information, find out more about the clinical trials, find out how you can be a part of that, because they want to make these treatments for us indigenous to what our needs are. And by gathering local DNA and by getting information from you, it's very helpful. Rinstar's been doing this a long time. They've done hundreds and hundreds of these particular things, and they do a terrific job. They're good folks. They're Gators. They support this program. They support their community, and they support you. Rinstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. Have a good night, folks. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.